Hello, jazz hands. As usual, total nerd over here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 13, 133 of the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. I am your host on this adventure, Cheryl Arkison. In 2024, in case you hadn't noticed, we're doing a rainbow version and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So I hope you are too. Good afternoon from overcast but warm but expecting a snowstorm Calgary. Winter is never over, so I need this bright version right here. Yeah, it's a warm day. I'll take the dog out for a walk after this and he'll be happy and very muddy afterwards. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, whenever, wherever you are joining us today. I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy that you've come along to play, because you know that's what I do. What's going on in my world this week? Kids went back to school today. Well, 2 kids went back to school today. My son had a really good spring break, and just towards the end of it was starting to feel again. So we had a respite from the long COVID symptoms, and then they came back yesterday. So he is with Dad today, running around like a maniac, doing stuff. Well, not really running around like a maniac. Sitting in the truck while my husband does stuff. And I am home with the dog, and the girls are at school. We had a great spring break. Didn't do anything, but it was relaxing and quiet, which is, I think, what we all needed. We've had a lot of company. Life is busy, so it was good. So if you are on spring break or have just wrapped up, hope you're having a good one. If spring break's not really your thing because you don't have kids around, well, I hope you're getting some changes of the seasons, or at least getting outside and enjoying the weather, and maybe, just maybe, the real rainbows will start showing up soon, right? This week's block, what are we doing? I made it in the monochromatic version all ready for us. So I kind of like it from the distance, because this week's block and last week's block, really seeing that kind of glow from the white to the dark, it's really quite fun. So this is the block. Now I'll bring it close. It's really easy. You can use scraps again for most of it if you'd like. The center portion is just a strip set. I went in rainbow order. You don't have to, but a strip set in rainbow order, and then we put sides on, and we'll go over how best to do the sides when the time comes. There's actually on the video not going to be a lot of sewing today, because when I said go to your scraps, I actually had a scrap block from week number, let's move that, 4 right up there. I made one the wrong size, and so I had an extra block, so I actually just sliced off half of it, but the purple was already gone, so we'll just add the purple and then continue on with the block. So are you ready? Let's get sewing. Week 13. Bring you over here. We will flip the camera around and say hello to the ladies, and then head down to our table. I just want to give a shout out here for Andrea Sang. It's an older work of hers. She doesn't do these map things quilts anymore, but that is Halifax. I'm dreaming of Halifax, and this is a tile that my daughter did in ceramics class in junior high. I would also take that as a vacation spot too. So didn't get to go anywhere for spring break, so I will travel vicariously through my studio decorations. So what do we need for today's block? It's really easy. You're going to need 2 rectangles of your background fabric. Whether you cut these from scraps or fresh, you want them to be a little less than half the width. You don't need the full width. You'll end up cutting off a fair amount. So a little less than half of the width of your finished blocks, and maybe 1/2 inch taller. Just give yourself some wiggle room. That's basically it. You don't want to cut these exactly the height of your block. Give yourself some wiggle room there. Don't need those quite yet. And then you're going to need a bunch of strips of your rainbow. As I said, I had already pieced together one version, or I had that already. And so I added a blue and I started sewing it, and I was like, wait, I got to show them live. So I stopped. So I still have to add the purple. But basically, you just want to create a strip set, maybe a third to half the width of your block. Just really depends on how wide you want that overall to be. But give yourself some wiggle room again to play with it, and what width you've got on either side. So you're just gonna sew those all together. I'm going again rainbow order, so from my pink to my purple in my rainbow. Press them all in one direction. I've realized I've pressed this one wrong, so I'm just gonna finger press that for now because it was bugging me that it was the wrong direction. But just to continue on with what I have here, in my original monochromatic one, I pressed towards the darker one every time so I wouldn't have any shadowing the lighter I went. And you'll just sew all of those together. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew this last one on. You are going to want to make sure that you don't have such thick pieces. You don't want to have such thick pieces that when you go to cut that center portion, that it's too, you're going to like cut off one of these, like that it's too tall. So as you assemble it, you can adjust, because you're just using little strips, you can adjust how wide or how tall these are. You can play around with that. So I kind of like that my blue is disproportionately larger here. I need to give this a good press, but I'm just going to double check my height. Yes, so my blocks are 10.5 inches square, so I have 11.5, give or take, here. So I got plenty of wiggle room and I can trim off. There's no point trimming it to that exact size at this point, but just make sure you have enough and that all of the colors of your rainbow are represented. Of course, like any other thing in improv, if you don't have all the colors of the rainbow in there, for example, you can always claim that it's your design decision. Right? There are no hard and fast rules. I am only providing a guide for what we're going to do. So there we go. That is my piece. I'm just going to move you over just a little bit. Get rid of my pin cushion. It's in the way. So now I want to take the two pieces. We're going to do them one at a time. And we have a couple of choices to make. The way we're going to do this is we are going to layer these right sides up with an overlap. So you can see I have an overlap between the rainbow piece and the background piece. And we're going to cut an angle, right? So you have to decide which side of the rainbow is going to be a narrow portion and which is going to be the thick, right? So I kind of think of it like a striation, right? An insert into something. So you've got to kind of decide, do I want it to be the thin part or the thick part? I'm just looking at the rest of my blocks and deciding what I am going to do. You also can decide whether, when you lay it out, which side's going to be up and which side's going to be down. I'm going to go with the pink being the narrower. So I've got my two fabrics, or two pieces, the striation and the background, layered right sides up. Before I make that cut, I just want to pull back and make sure that I have covered everything, right? That I'm not going to make a cut and have like a gap, like if I did that. I don't want that gap, right? So just going to double check once I place my ruler that I'll be good. And you're going to cut through both pieces at the same time. Remove the scraps. And so we cut them right sides up. We're going to sew, as usual, right sides together. Okay, So take that to the machine and just straight seam all the way down. Just pay attention to your seam allowances. Don't want them to flip on you. I mean, obviously it's not the end of the world if they do, but if you can do something to prevent that, then we will, right? Okay, so there is the first one. This is going to lay much flatter if you press towards the background, even if your background is lighter, okay? Just give that a simple press. This is one that's, be careful not to iron it, right? I'll show you what I mean. Let me move you over, right? You want to press, meaning you're going to put the iron down and lift it when you move it. You're not rubbing it all over like this. Why is that really important here? Well, you just cut an angle on both of these fabric, this set of fabrics and this fabric, which means that's got way more bias. And this is, if you start ironing it, you're going to stretch it out and then the block won't lay flat. Okay, that's the first one. And then we just repeat for the other side. So again, I'm just going to move that one up there. We're going to layer it. I'm going to decide how much do I want to cut. Oh, see, that would be too much, except I actually want to do it. I'm right-handed, so I need to cut on the right side of the ruler. So I'm going to shift you. Right, so I want to make sure I'm covered on the bottom corner and I'm okay on the top, which I am. I can even shift a little and then go ahead and make that cut. So some scraps to the side, and then I'm going to sew that last seam on. That's it. Right, really easy block. Mine was made extra easy by the fact that I'd already sewn my strips together. But that's okay, you didn't need to see that. And then we have that last one. I'm going to go ahead and press this, not iron it, press it. And then come back to show you the finished block. It's such a simple thing. Really, if you haven't noticed by now, so many of the blocks we're doing are really very simple. We'll maybe get some more complicated ones, but sometimes simple is best. It gives us a really strong impact. It's very graphic. I actually can see this repeated in a quilt, right? If you had one going the other way or you alternated directions, you'd get this kind of variation on a rail fence sort of block. I just feel like I'm a little bit short, so I'm just going to check, because then we'll talk about troubleshooting if I am. I feel like I didn't make it wide enough. Oh, I am just a tiny bit short up there when I go to square this up. So let's do it. Let's talk about troubleshooting. What if your block is just a little bit too small? You have choices, right? I could easily take one of these scraps, sew it on, right? And then likely that would give me enough width. It's background. I'm not going to notice that seam at all when things are done. So that's fix number one. Is just add another strip, right? I could add another strip if I wanted of the rainbow. That one's going to be too small, but you get the idea, right? I could add another strip of the rainbow just to make it wider in there. I could add a completely different fabric if I wanted, or just one of my rainbow colors. Any one of those things would work in here. The other option, option number 2, is to just go with it. This only works if you are so very close. So basically, if you are less than 1/4 of an inch out, you can make it work. So I am lined up on the edge over here, and I am basically right on the 10.5 inch mark for most of the block. And then just right up here, I'm on like the 10 3/8 inch mark. You know what? That is going to be contained within seam allowance. I won't need to pull or stretch this to make it fit in. I will just square up the block, probably put a little pin in it to remind me so that when assembly time comes, I'm not going to worry about lining up the outside edge and pulling the block to make the outside edges meet. I will just be coming in a little bit, and not coming in, I guess, what's the right word? I'll still be sewing on the 10 1/4 inch mark here when this block gets joined, and there will be less fabric contained in the seam allowance. Is it risky? A little bit, but not too much, as long as I've got enough fabric there. If it was really short, like if I was really close to that 10 1/4 inch mark, then I would go with option 1 and add stuff in. But because I am so close and it really only is in this top 2 inches of the block, I'm going to go ahead, have it be a tiny bit smaller, put a pin in it to mark it so that when I assemble the row with the rest of the blocks, I'll be able to know that that's the case there. So I'll just leave squaring up for now. There is block number 13 in the pastel version, and there is block number 13 in the monochromatic version. Right? 2 slightly different versions. Right? I went a lot narrower here, a lot wider here. You can play around with that. You could have this be straighter if you want, rather than at as much of an angle. You could have it come to a total point if you wanted to. Excuse me. You've got some wiggle room. You could have these angles be parallel as opposed to coming together to a point, right? All of that is play. You have that freedom to explore and experiment and see what happens when you do this. I'm going to throw these up on the design wall. See, super quick block. Even if I had done all the sewing online with you, it still would have been really, really quick. That's one of the things I just love about this Playcation, is we can do really simple, straightforward things for a strong impact, right? It can be really neat. Ooh, this just gives me an idea. Hold on a second. When you do this, I just realized it looking at that. And if your dark one is the smaller bit and you have it on the top, it really kind of gives that notion of like a road in perspective a little bit. I think it's stronger with the darker on top, but it's working here as well. So some interesting kind of design elements that you can play with. Years ago, I made something kind of, did I? Maybe I just had the idea. But like a whole baby quilt would be kind of neat with just this, like one giant block. But you wouldn't want it, like it'd be hard unless you have a lot of space to make that larger than a baby quilt. But you could have a lot of fun building your striation portion. Excuse me. Excuse me. All right then, woken up. What I was saying is you could have a lot of fun building that striation portion on a larger scale and then just adding the 2 sides for it, and could get all symbolic and metaphorical about, you know, the road in the future and the path they have to take and whatever else you want to do there. I get that way sometimes. You know I'm a nerd, right? So that's it for block 13. Had lots of joinings, no questions or anything. So I just want to leave an opportunity for anyone to make any questions or comments with it. The Rainbow Sew Along continues on. We will continue on for, that's 13 weeks, for 36 more weeks we've got together. I'm glad you are here on the trip with me. I'm having a blast making fun, easy, striking improv blocks. So I'm really happy that you are here. For everyone, hi Mindy, thank you for saying hi. I'm really happy you're here, whether you're joining me live today, watching the recording on Instagram or on YouTube. It is wonderful to have you with me on the 2024 Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong Rainbow Edition. This is Cheryl Arkeson. Have yourselves a lovely week. Take care, everybody.